Sonic Boom Episode 9, Don't Judge Me. We start out at night where Eggman uses a giant machine with moth wings to attack a village, but somehow the heroes are still awake to fight him. I guess the cops called them and woke them up. Or the machine woke them up. And Knuckles uses a giant light bulb to get the moths to follow it. Good thing he had that. Eggman's in the seat of that thing, and he's holding levers. Why wouldn't he be able to prevent the flying machine from going after the light? It makes sense if it was a Mothbot without him in it. Eggman says in an obvious lie that he's injured. Of course, I'd think it's a lie, because this show doesn't have the guts to make him actually injured. At least AOSCH had the guts to have tons of slapstick with Eggman, and have him be covered in soot. And it's sad when that show has more guts. A civilian approaches Sonic when he's eating a sub, and since Sonic talks for a long time about how maybe he wants an autograph, it's predictable that he'll be let down. Then it turns out that Eggman's suing Sonic, and Sonic thinks the trial's a joke the whole time. And somehow, the trial gets away with having a robot of Eggman's be the judge. Although, it was amusing how he said he was programmed to be fair and impartial just to praise Eggman for creating him. So, did Eggman threaten people to get away with this? How much money is a prosecutor being offered to defend Eggman of all people, who logically should be gone after by the government and military cops on a daily basis? So far, the only saving grace of this episode is, well, the Mothbot idea, and how serious that civilian was when he just casually said, Sonic, Eggman's suing you. Like, that was amusing at least. Six says in the witness stand that Eggman's robots are evil and have to be destroyed. But somehow the crowd gasps at that instead of agreeing with her, from personal experience with robots. This story sucks. Orbot says he doesn't consider Eggman kind on the stand, just to lie that he is. He'd get accused of perjury immediately and prosecuted for it. I guess they think because he's a robot, he's immune to the law? Then we see Orbot project a fake black and white video of Eggman pushing people in swings. Why is it black and white? And Cubot says in front of the trial that they're done faking the evidence. Orbot and Cubot wouldn't have their hands on the evidence. The lawyers would have it. And again, he would get in trouble for clearly saying they faked the evidence. But I guess because they're robots, they won't get in trouble. Because they're considered an extension of Eggman's will. Why can't they just say that? Tails happily says how much he likes Sonic, and then the prosecutor accuses Sonic of being a menace who destroys anything that disagrees with them. Well, robots disagree with them, but that's not the point. He wouldn't destroy people. And the crowd laughs, being in favor of him somehow, without being brainwashed by brainwashing pollen. This is the issue 40 of Sonic Boom. This is supposed to be a comedy show, but I don't see how this is a comedy. I just see this as just as dark as issue 40. Just as ridiculously frustrating. Tails' complaints say he's twisting his words against them, and I think about how illegal that'd be for a prosecutor. They're not supposed to ask leading questions. It makes sense that they made Knuckles say, that guy's good. Because no, he's not. Even I know he beat disbarred. Then after Comedy Chimp wastes our time, I see Knuckles call himself a simple country lawyer, having a complete tangent in front of the trial saying he's stupid just like the crowd. And I smiled in amusement that the crowd growled at him for it, but still, he'd never be made Sonic's lawyer. Sonic would be given the best defense lawyer ever. Not to mention, no court in the universe would even let Eggman sue Sonic. His case would be thrown out immediately. That's right, judges have the power to throw cases out. The only reason it would go to trial would be if it's not an open and shut obvious case. Then Knuckles decides to argue with himself, as when he's on the witness stand, he angers Sonic by saying that he's too lame to do that kind of damage. Also illegal. And Sonic is provoked to say that he's totally capable of doing that kind of damage, being insulted. And then they have a stupid dance party with colored spotlights in the courtroom. The writer isn't even trying to write a court scene well, is he? So why do it? Why insult the audience? Why not explain that everyone in the court is being brainwashed to be okay with this? Or have this be established to be just a dream? Amy smacks the floor with her hammer and sends the robot upwards. Why didn't they just do that in the first place then? If this is a robot, why can't they just smash it? Oh, but I guess the stupid crowd would be turned on them for that. And Sonic reveals that Eggman can move his head just fine. Realistically, he would get injured in a fight with Sonic eventually. But even if he was injured, who cares? They wouldn't care. Amy would care, I guess, but... The heroes fight some badniks. The only thing interesting about this was that Tails got awkward about how he couldn't fight with a broken stick. Eggman breaks through the wall of the courthouse with his Eggmobile instead of damaging it from crashing into the wall and not breaking through the wall at all, and actually getting injured in an ironic twist that would make a good ending. That's always stupid. And then Sonic spin dashes at him, insulting and pursuing him. This was the stupidest episode in a while, if not the stupidest. In fact, I think this is one of the top 2 stupidest episodes of the entire show. There's so many inaccuracies with how a trial is carried out that it's ridiculous. And I spent basically the whole trial pointing them out. Eggman's case would have been thrown out immediately. Everyone hates him. They wouldn't care if he got injured. Well, some people would be nice enough to pity him, but no one would actually prosecute Sonic for saving the world from a terrorist by fighting him all the time, even if that means he gets hurt. He saved the town from his Mothbot and got sued for it. That Mothbot wouldn't be going after Light if Eggman was in it controlling it, which he was, so that was dumb. It could have been great taking advantage of how it's based on a moth, but instead it sucked. At least this episode isn't as frustrating as it could be, because it's not like Sonic's actual friends were turning on him, which would have been completely unbearable. Why did anyone other than Knuckles even need to be there if he was there to defeat it with the giant light bulb? Sonic shouldn't have even gotten the blame. It should have been Knuckles if anything. The crowd in that trial somehow rooted for Eggman instead of Sonic, with no explanation that they were infiltrator robots. The case somehow got to trial, even though most cases actually don't. Realistically, we would have had to skip ahead months to get to the trial. Orbot and Cubot wouldn't have had their hands on any evidence because that'd be the lawyer's job. Sonic would have a real defense lawyer. Knuckles would be told to cut it out immediately. The judge bot would say order in the court every time Sonic talked. Orbot would get perjury charges. I didn't think anything could top the stupidity of how Archie's trials were, but somehow they managed. Somehow they got even more inaccurate than that. The writer wasn't even trying to make sense. There was even a random dance party with spotlights out of nowhere. And it'd be fine if it turned out it was all just a dream. At least with Archie, I couldn't say that the writer wasn't even trying and wasn't taking it seriously at all. On the bright side, when Sonic was told that Eggman is suing him in a completely serious tone of voice, and Knuckles started arguing with himself, I was smiling a lot. This is the closest the show has ever gotten to making me laugh at this point. But I was distracted by how stupid the writing was. Even if this is an amusing episode, it's also a terribly written one that's too frustrating to be good, which is why you can't forgive frustrating writing. The only thing it has over the other times in the franchise that Sonic's been summoned to court is that it's not taken all that seriously and is a parody the whole time, so it's not as dark, which is different from what happened in Archie and AOSDH where it was taken completely seriously. Sonic wouldn't be in trouble for doing what he had to do to defend the village, even if that got Eggman hurt. If anything, it makes more sense that Eggman would be prosecuted, considering all the crimes he committed being a bad guy. But he'd just have a giant robot prepared to break into the courthouse or prison and set him free. So they have to see him as unprosecutable. At that point, though, they should respect Sonic for dealing with him even more than ever because he's the only one who can keep them under control. So, logically, he should have full leeway to do whatever it takes to stop him. Eggman made a doomsday device at one point. It's so gutless of the show to have Eggman fake his injury. Like, they couldn't even handle him actually being injured. When, logically, that'd be an inevitability when he's fighting Sonic personally in his Eggmobile all the time. The tension of the trial would have been higher because he really would be injured. Episode 9-2, Dr. Eggman's Tomato Sauce. Tails installs music speakers in his plane. Knuckles wastes time teasing him that he loves his plane just for Tails to happily say he does. And then Eggman hands out tomato sauce at a shop. Who the hell would buy that from a known criminal? Sonic naturally stops them from eating it, and Amy accuses him of trying to poison the villagers. And Eggman actually tries them himself. Well, that's smart of him. I guess the tomato sauce has brainwashing pollen in it to make people like him. Sonic really loves the taste of it, so does that mean there's ecstasy in it? Tails says he'll buy the sauce and run some tests, And he says he even tested it for mind control serum. Obviously, Eggman wouldn't use the same serum twice. Did he have mind control serum before? It would be nice if we were told that that was why the crowd was being so loyal to Eggman in the court. But like, you just reference mind control serum casually, like, oh, let's not base an entire plot around it. It's just a background thing. Amy wonders if Eggman really has changed. Then Sonic sees a menacing picture of Eggman on a billboard, and a kid calls him his hero and wants to be just like him, because apparently everyone forgot that he was a terrorist. I don't blame the heroes for not being suspicious. Maybe the concept that Eggman's laundering money through his business is too over their heads. It would at least kind of make sense if the kid said that the reason he called him his hero was because he was proud of Eggman for turning good and having legitimate work. Tails says that his plane's been acting funny, and he's been working on it all night. Then it turns out that the can of tomato sauce can grow spider legs and start sabotaging Tails' inventions. Which reminded me of the wrist robot in Sonic Underground that was spying on people. The heroes go out for burgers, and Eggman appears on the Comedy Chimp show. Comedy Chimp even says that he's in his evil lair and he's a supervillain. So, if they know he's still a supervillain, how are they trusting him? Eggman says that fighting Sonic's become tedious and he wants a real challenge, even though he hasn't taken over the world. And if he's that good at making tomato sauce, he wouldn't find that a real challenge either. So he's obviously lying. He taunts Sonic's hairstyle, and he says that he's gotten every can of tomato sauce in every house in town. Then Eggman stupidly reveals that his cans are taking control of all their electrical devices. Oh, it's a ripoff of the plot from Sonic X, Mean Machines. At least it makes sense this time, except no, it doesn't. Six defends a civilian with a boomerang, and she says that she was right that their appliances would turn against them. I wish we were told that their appliances were taken over by a magical spell, like an amulet. I don't see how this is possible. It made sense when it was just cans that walked. Even then, how could there be room for all that wiring in a hollow can? The heroes fight the appliances, and Tails shouts to run, and they all start avoiding Tails' plane. Tails delusionally thinks he can talk his plane out of attacking them. This is ridiculously stupid. Tails isn't supposed to be an idiot. It's amusing, but still. This is just as dumb as when Sonic X Tails complained because he thought his plane was lonely. Why would he even try to play ball with a biplane? Seriously, what's wrong with them? He tells them to stop Eggman without him while he'll save his plane. I hope he'll just jump into the pilot seat instead of wasting time talking to it. What is the point of Eggman holding Comedy Chimp hostage and tied up? He doesn't say that he's doing all this to intimidate people to let him take over the world. I guess we're always supposed to assume that, because otherwise most of his evil plans look really pointless to him. Usually he has something to gain. The cans form into a big robot, and Amy attacks it with a hammer. Tails gets into the plane, and of course it just barely manages to fly over a rock that it was heading towards, when realistically it would have failed. That wasn't too satisfying. It would have been as satisfying as it should have been if he had more trouble and had to do more before flying it over a rock. Knuckles carries and throws sticks onto the top of the robot, and she pulls something off it to damage it. She has to have super strength. The robot's just fine though and gets up. I don't fully describe these action scenes unless something interesting happens, because you can imagine for yourself the generic things happening. For the most part, just a forgettable blur of the characters generically fighting weak robot, where a character does one hit and then we cut away from them so we can't get invested in their struggle. Tails steals the remote and presses the button to turn all the appliances off. Why would Eggman have that installed? Also, how many injuries and deaths would have been caused by the appliances in every person's house turning on them? And how much money and time would it take to replace all of them? This is actually needlessly dark. But let's totally ignore those consequences instead of showing us how an actual happy ending was achieved. He says he's got a warehouse of thousands more of those cans, but of course he can't sell them to people anymore because it was all caught on camera. And he says that he shouldn't have said that all on TV, but what was the point if he didn't want to get found out? Wasn't the whole point of terrorizing the civilians with cans to intimidate them to putting him in charge? He'd have to say it all on TV to get his message across. Besides, they'd all blame him anyways. And the cans can walk, so they can get into people's houses and do whatever they want regardless of whether they're sold or not, can't they? If his only goal was to fight the heroes with appliances, what was the point of doing that instead of just using normal robots? I guess to save money on materials because he could use already built appliances for a giant robot and stuff instead of his own. This episode was about Eggman selling cans of tomato sauce to everyone to make them like him in a refreshing twist. And what's really a refreshing twist is that they weren't brainwashed. And after the heroes are genre savvy and suspect him of tainting the sauce, it turns out he was creative enough to make the cans evil instead, because the cans grow legs and go over to Tails' plane, which have been acting weird lately. Sadly, the plot immediately goes off the rails and randomly becomes a ripoff of Sonic X's Mean Machines, and it's just as confusing here. How could any kind of technology make appliances act like this? It'd make more sense to just stick with what it looks like and have a can start sabotaging Tails' inventions, like taking a blowtorch to them, not outright taking them over. And even then, we should be told that it has intangible, invisible wires in it, so that's how a hollow can have robot circuitry AI. It tried so hard to be creative that it wrapped around into being a ripoff again, when they were almost there. Even then, that can with the spider legs just reminded me of the watches with legs and cameras from Sonic Underground. But it's still been original because instead of having a camera, it had the ability to sabotage Tails' inventions. Even then, the first thing I thought when I saw that can's misdeeds is, shouldn't there be security cameras in the house just in case? Well, I guess everyone would find that too creepy to allow, even though it could be that just Tails' lab has the cameras. Even though it's perfectly in character for Six to have cameras, well, I think she'd still take the fall and tell them about her footage if it meant ruining Eggman's plan. Any complaints she get about spying wouldn't be anything more than the usual mistreatment she gets. Seriously, I don't see how these guys are her friends. And even if they tell her to take the cameras down, she could just put them back up again. Plus, the heroes were already suspicious of the tomato sauce. So if Tails' plane ends up in a bunch of pieces the next time he sees it, he'd look like a complete idiot if he blamed one of his friends instead of Eggman's suspicious new scheme. And Six is more than creative enough to figure out the can was the culprit. The problem is that the heroes can't take advantage of her creative thinking because they never listen to her, so she can't even be useful in that sense. Tails is a genius. You'd think he'd be creative enough to figure out it's the cans that are the problem if the sauce isn't. At the very least, shouldn't he have suspected Eggman of laundering money through his business or something? More importantly, how did he establish a business? Who would give him the license to be a tomato sauce salesman? And since when does anybody sell tomato sauce outside in the open like that instead of on grocery store shelves? This plot at least tried to be interesting and exciting, which is a huge step up from the last couple episodes, so I can respect it for that. It's good that it had an intriguing mystery over what Eggman was up to. It wasn't immediately obvious right from the start. But the civilians still looked like idiots who had no reason to trust Eggman after everything he's done. I immediately thought of an issue in the Boom comic where nobody trusted Eggman even after he tried to do good things. He just got hit with a cane and stuff. It's sad when that comic looks way better written.